Hi, I'm Caden, here with my brother, Cal, and you're watching Eating W's.
Eat the W.
That's a W. Let's eat one. Let's eat one. That's a W.
On today's episode of Eating W's, we have our NFL Week 3 recap. So before we jump into some of the games that we want to talk about, we're going to give a few pieces of news, starting with some news on the Pro Bowl, which is a little bit further down the line. But they are officially cutting the Pro Bowl game out of the Pro Bowl and instead making it a week of competitions, such as they do with the skills competitions, something they already have been doing for a few years now. So now they will do a week of those competitions just as they have been, and that will all cultivate in a flag football game between the players who earn their spot on the Pro Bowl. So instead of doing the tackle, they decided to make it a flag football game, a little safer, a little more injury prevention, and also, to be honest, it's weird to say, but it'll probably be more exciting because there wasn't much defense happening in the Pro Bowl to begin with.
There usually
So
isn't.
you might as well just make it a flag football game where they can have a lot more fun and be a lot more kind of creative with the way they play. So we'll see how it ends up going. I've always really liked the skills competition, so I think that's what they're going to lean on. But for now, it's just going to be the skills competition and a flag game. Now moving on to a couple of injuries. Mac Jones, starting quarterback for the New England Patriots, suffered a high ankle sprain that will have him out for several weeks. No for sure timetable yet, but he will definitely miss this coming up week against the Packers and very likely to miss more weeks past that. So it'll be the Brian Hoyer show there in New England for this game against Green Bay, in Green Bay this week. And then finally, Sterling Shepard is likely to miss the entire season after suffering injury on the final offensive play for the Giants, which, talk about a kick in the nuts. That's rough, the final offensive play.
And yeah, it was very much pointless too. They were down by 7, needed a touchdown, so then they were pretty far away.
Yeah,
That's too bad to
That just
happen.
sucks when you see stupid little things like that. But that's some of the news for this week. So now we will jump straight into the game, starting with the Chiefs heading to Indianapolis and losing to the Colts 20-17. Something Cal and I both predicted would happen because the NFL is just that much of a cluster. There is no real way. You can analyze it and make informed decisions, but there is no true way to have the correct decision every time because it's just so unpredictable.
It really is, and this shows that there's still parity in the NFL, as the Colts, who were 0-2 and getting shut out by the Jaguars, and now go and beat the Chiefs, one of the top teams in the AFC, which had a little bit of help from the refs, but that still doesn't really matter. They controlled most of that game and really deserved the win.
Yeah, the Chiefs actually had it in their hands until their defensive tackle Chris Jones said some not so nice words in front of the ref, and I believe even kind of to the ref, which earned them a unnecessary roughness penalty, or maybe not unnecessary roughness. I can't remember what exactly the penalty was, but nevertheless, it gave the Colts 15 yards and a free first down, which led to them scoring the game-winning touchdown with just seconds left. So. Next up, we have a little bit of a shocker, in my opinion. We have the Bills taking their first loss to the Miami Dolphins with a score of 21-19. Now, I know we should probably be talking about how well the Dolphins played, because don't get me wrong, they definitely did. But in this win, all I've been really seeing a bunch about is the controversy that the Dolphins put themselves in by putting Tua Tagovailoa back in after suffering what in my eyes was a pretty obvious concussion before
It sure
half.
looked like a concussion injury. But
Yep. He got hit after this throw, and you could see his head whip back and smack against the ground so hard. Tua got up, he could barely stand to begin with. He tried to run and began tumbling, even fell straight back down at one point. But nevertheless, on the other side of the half, he was back in the game and playing well, for the fact that he probably barely knew where he was.
The Dolphins ruled it as a back injury, which is how they were able to put him back into the game. And they're being investigated by the NFL for their concussion protocols, because that sure seemed like a concussion.
Yep, so no news yet, but we'll keep an eye out on a big fine that could be coming to Miami here soon. Next up, we have the Vikings game, in which the Lions went to Minnesota to take on the Vikings, and the Vikings won by a score of 28-24. on a last-minute touchdown by KJ Osborne, who was just born with that clutch gene in his veins. He has caught multiple game-winning touchdowns in his 2 years being a relative starter, or close to starter at least. He, of course, caught the big one last year against Carolina, and then countless other big-time plays in clutch moments that I can't really remember off the top of my head, but I know they happened, at least 2 or 3 others last year. And then now, of course, caught the game-winning touchdown against the Lions this week.
Yeah, he's really showing up as the third man. And, they said it was the same play that the Osborne ran against Carolina that they ran against Detroit, which is a little weird that you're running the same play because you have a whole different coaching staff. So I thought that was a little odd, but it seemed to work.
Hey man, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Something that was broke though was the Vikings during the first 3 quarters of the game, because actually we looked rough, and it is quite funny because our biggest problem last year was the second and fourth quarter, and most specifically the final 2 minutes of each of those quarters going into half and the end of the game. And this year, it seems to be the dead opposite. We seem to only be able to play in those 2 quarters because our first and third quarter was very rough. It was the first time in many years, I can't remember exactly, I want to say mid-90s, that a team won a game after coming back from a 10-point deficit in the first half and in the second half. At one point in the first half, we were down 14-0, and we came back and tied it up to go into half. And then in one point in the second half, we were down by 10 points and then ended up winning the game. So that's just so weird to think about, that we were able to get behind so bad in the first and third quarter, but then win it in the second and fourth. But hey, I'd rather win it in the second and fourth when it really matters.
Yep, so that's the clutch time.
Yep. So next up, we got a surprising one as well, with the Jaguars going into Los Angeles and smoking the Chargers by 28 points, with the score of the Jags with 38 and the Chargers with 10. And it begs the question, are the Jaguars a good team?
They might be a good team. I mean, they seem to really have it together this year. Doug Peterson has come in and really changed that culture.
Yep. And my favorite thing about the Jags is they're not a flashy offense. They're not hitting you with constant big plays. They did have, I believe it was a 53-yard rushing touchdown from James Robinson in this game, later towards the game when they were trying to run some clock out. But they're not hitting you with those big explosive plays, kind of like you see with the Bills offense or stuff like that. They are just driving down the field, they are consistently getting points, and they're playing stout defense. And those are the teams that really shock you towards playoff time. I think if the Jags could maybe keep this together and get a spot in the playoffs, or they're currently even leading the AFC South, they might surprise some people once you get to January and February.
They could easily be AFC South champions. They got a couple of wins over the AFC South teams already. They got quite a lead already in that division.
Certainly. So next up, we got the Packers heading to Tampa Bay and picking up a win against the Bucs by a score of 14-12, in which the Buccaneers failed a 2-point conversion to tie it late.
Yeah, unfortunately, they were able to knock away the 2-point conversion attempt. This game was well in hand for Green Bay early on in the first quarter. They were up 14-3 and were driving for a third touchdown when Vita Vea dropped back into coverage and forced a fumble at the 1-yard line on Aaron Jones, which really seemed to turn the game around, at least for Tampa, and it really stalled out Green Bay, who was not able to score again, but unfortunately was able to keep the Buccaneers from scoring too much.
Yeah, that was an exciting game towards the end there. It was crazy to see. When the way they let Tom Brady hang in that game for so long, it was making me nervous for
Those
the Packers.
Games,
but
usually when you let Brady hang around, he gets you, and he almost got us, but nope, not quite.
it just shows that age is finally actually kind of starting to show on Brady, because
Brady's starting to show up.
Brady 3 years ago cuts the Packers for letting him hang in there for that long. So next up, we have the final game we're going to talk about, which was the Monday night game of the Cowboys heading to New York to take on the Giants and picking up a win over their divisional opponent, 23-16. Now this, of course, was Cooper Rush's third start and his third win. He has been able to continue to get it done as a starter in the NFL, which is crazy to think about because you usually don't see backups come in and show consistent winning. You can see them maybe going and show some flashy stats one game or picking up a win here or there, but you rarely see them win this many games in a row as a backup, so impressive for Rush.
Yeah, very impressive, and he's the first quarterback since Kurt Warner as an undrafted QB to win his first 3 NFL regular season starts. So he joins the class with Kurt Warner, which is pretty good company to be in.
Certainly. The Giants did all they could, as we mentioned, sadly, with the Shepard injury earlier. Saquon had a big touchdown run towards the end. That was a huge momentum shift, but nevertheless, the Cowboys were able to stay in it and pick up a win, so good for them. So those were some of the games that we wanted to talk about from NFL Week 3. Make sure to check out other games and look up those scores because there was many other exciting games. And the one very not exciting game, I'm looking at you, Niners-Broncos. But nevertheless, you should look up those scores and see how they did. And until next time, don't forget
To eat the W.